revealing my most sinister case. 10 haunting secrets that still curse my therapy practice. Jessica Harlow had always believed in the healing power of words, but as she sat in her sunlit office, the air thickened with a tension that gnawed at her soul. The past few days, she had uncovered something sinister: 10 chilling case files from former clients. Each one whispered a story laced with tragedy that could have been straight out of a horror movie. One client detailed shadows that danced along their walls at night, shadows that seemed to pulse with life. Another spoke of a constant feeling of being watched always. 10 innocuous names, yet each one was wrapped in a shroud of unrest and darkness that seeped through every line of text. Jessica's heart raced as she turned the pages. Each account felt like a tightening vice around her chest. Families torn apart, children screaming. She felt her breath hitch at the revelation that one client had confronted a police officer, only for the man to bark back a warning to stay quiet. The room felt smaller, reality closing in as her mind spun with unanswered questions. She glanced around the cozy office, where warmly painted walls and upbeat artwork had always given her comfort. Now, it felt like an echo chamber for the very dread her clients had brought into her life. That evening, a chill swept through her home as she tucked her daughter, Emily, into bed. The little girl stirred slightly, mumbling about the man from the woods. Jessica smiled weakly, trying to dismiss it as mere childish imagination, but dread clawed at her. Dismissing it felt impossible when that unsettling chill pressed in on her. She stepped out into the hallway, shadows flickering past her as the setting sun disappeared. Was it just a trick of the tired light? She shook her head, refusing to let fear rule. Later, while watching the news, a report knocked the wind out of her. Another neighbor was missing, and grim descriptions of a lurking, shadowy figure had residence in a panic. Jessica's pulse quickened as the somber anchor spoke, sharing that whispers filled the community, terrifying echoes of fears long buried. Then came the thump from the back of the house, a hollow sound that felt like a warning. Her skin prickled. She hastened to the back, half expecting to meet the very horrors illuminated by the news. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jessica felt the walls closing in around her, that eerie sensation twisting into an overwhelming dread as anonymous letters began to show up, threatening her life, referencing her clients' fates in detail. Each word sent tendrils of fear snaking into her mind. Was her home, once a sanctuary, now a battleground? That night, everything collided when an ominous knock echoed at her door. A police officer stood on her porch, rigid as stone, just like the fear choking the very air she breathed. Heart pounding against her ribcage, she thought of the warning from her client's past. Friends can turn enemies, she reminded herself. Desperately, she weighed her options. Open the door and invite either salvation or impending doom. Shadows lengthened behind her, whispering that the worst was yet to come. Would this figure bring the truth or a descent into darkness, ensnaring her family in a web she could no longer untangle? The knock reverberated in Jessica's mind, each echo hammering home the threat she felt swelling in her chest. She hesitated, breath shallow, a chorus of warnings dancing behind her eyes. Did she dare entangle herself with authority when its allegiance seemed questionable? The officer shifted, his posture reflecting the tension in her soul. "Mrs. Harlow," he said, voice steady yet grave, "I need to speak to you about your daughter." The world spun. Emily. Panic ignited like wildfire. She bolted toward the door, but the thought of shadows creeping behind him froze her feet. What about Emily? The question slipped out, laced with desperation. The officer's eyes flickered, then hardened. "We believe she might be in danger." Words struck her like ice water. In danger? The shadows whispered louder now, an insistent echo in her ears. But wait, wasn't this the same officer who had barked warnings to her client? Hadn't he seemed just as ominous? Yet she had no choice but to listen. This could lead to the truth or further into darkness. "Please, come in," Jessica finally said, stepping aside, but part of her scrambled for an escape route. The moment the officer entered, the chill settled deeper in the room. The sunlight had fled, leaving behind flickering candlelight that cast horrifying shapes across the walls. He began outlining recent theories about the missing neighbors, dark tales of a figure spotted around the woods, an entity that seemed to slip through shadows. "Families are terrified, and we believe it might be related to some of the reports you've received from your clients." His voice dropped lower, as if afraid to awaken something dormant. This happened to my clients." Jessica's voice trembled as she shared snippets. Each revelation pried at her thoughts, like a dentist ripping out teeth that had long been rotten. Had her practice somehow summoned whatever horror was haunting their lives? The darkness whispered, urging her to trust the officer, but her instincts screamed otherwise. Suddenly, a loud crash came from the hallway, Emily's room. Fear galvanized her. "Stay here," she ordered, bolting toward the sound. As she raced down the narrow corridor, her heart pounded like a drum, heralding calamity. Emily's door stood ajar, shadows swirling as if breath had frozen them in place. Jessica pushed the door open, anticipation clawing at her gut, but nothing moved inside. The room was empty, the toys scattered, the bed unmade, everything as it should be except for her daughter. Where was Emily? The unanswered question morphed into a haunting dread that gripped her. She spun around, desperate, only to find the officer filling the threshold, an unreadable expression on his face. Jessica felt the fear coiling tighter around her like a noose. "Where is she?" Before he could respond, the air thickened. The house shuddered, a low, unsettling resonance that rattled her bones. The shadows writhed violently now, dark tendrils reaching for her. Panic bubbled up, overwhelming her senses. "Emily!" she screamed, realizing her voice had become a mere whisper against the storm of shadows gushing toward her. Tendrils coiled around her wrists. A strange whisper, her daughter's name, echoed from nowhere and everywhere. The officer lunged toward the chaos, but before Jessica could scream his name, she was engulfed, pulled away from the only reality she knew. The last thing she heard was a chilling laugh echoing from the depths of her mind. If light could be taken away, what did that leave behind? Then, silence enveloped her, a darkness as thick as despair, and she lost all sense of the world. Was this the end or merely the beginning? A new reality awaited her, awaiting unraveling. What truly haunted her and her family? The shadows had a voice, and it was hungry for the truth. Somewhere in the void, Jessica's consciousness flickered in and out as if stuck between dimensions. She felt weightless, yet heavy. A sense of dread pressed down on her, filling the emptiness with icy fingers that clawed at her memories. Where was she? Where was Emily? The darkness coiled tighter, almost suffocating, but a sliver of light appeared, faint and flickering. Jessica lunged toward it, feeling the pull of hope, but it danced away from her grasp. Panic surged, an electric charge coursing through her veins. "Emily!" She cried out again, but the utterance felt swallowed instantly by the consuming blackness. Suddenly, a sound broke through, faint at first, like whispers fluttering through the leaves of a distant tree. "Mommy!" The voice was soft, angelic yet tainted with an underlying despair. Jessica's heart caught in her throat. Was it really Emily? "Emily! Where are you?" The darkness shifted. Shapes began to form, twisting around her in ever-tightening spirals. Each shadow held a piece of her fear. Each urged her to stay where she was. The voice called again, fainter this time, almost beyond her reach. "Mommy!" Help with newfound desperation. She fought against the darkness, stretching every part of herself toward that voice. The shadows shrieked in protest, swirling with agony, but Jessica pressed on. "I'm coming." A sudden pull yanked at her, throwing her weightless form back, grappling her heart with frigid fingers. Then, just as abruptly as it had gripped her, the darkness released. Light shattered through the murky confinement, and she tumbled into a chaotic brilliance. Her arms hit the floor. Jessica gasped, taking in the familiar scent of her home, the wood polish, the warmth of the sun filtering through yellow curtains. But something was wrong. She was in the living room, yet it felt like a different place, twisted and wrong. The furniture was out of place, as though someone had rifled through the house, leaving chaos in their wake. The air was thick, electric with dread. Above her, the light bulbs flickered ominously. Emily! She scrambled to her feet, barely standing, eyes darting around her home, her sanctuary now tainted. Clenching her fists, she pushed through the fear. There was something here, an unmistakable presence lurking, concealed amongst the shadows. As she paced through the darkened rooms, a soft sound caught her attention. The slow creak of the floorboards echoed, and then a soft, chilling giggle skipped through the house, razor-edged and taunting. "Mommy, mommy!" A shiver snaked down her spine. It was Emily's voice, yet warped, cruel. Jessica's stomach nodded. This was no normal laughing. It harbored malice, a hint of chaos. This was not her daughter. Or was it? Jessica rushed toward the source, her heart racing, echoing her footfalls on the floor. She gripped the doorknob of Emily's room, hesitant, breath caught in her throat. Fear wrapped around her like a smoke, thick and choking. Swallowing hard, Jessica turned the knob. There was no turning back. The door swung open, revealing a room tinged with shadows, each corner twisting grotesquely. A shape loomed at the far end, familiar but wrong, the silhouette of her daughter. Jessica stepped inside, heart pounding, caught between hope and horror. "Emily?" she whispered, breathless. The figure turned, and in the brief flash of light, the face morphed. A cruel smile stretched across familiar features. "I'm here, Mommy." A burst of laughter erupted, chilling her to the core, wrapping around her like chains. "It wasn't her, Emily." The room began to distort, the walls closing in. "What do you want?" Jessica screamed, knowing she was losing precious seconds. The darkness melted away as more laughter enveloped her, and Emily's room vanished, leaving eerie silence behind. The shadows had returned, lurking just out of sight. They hadn't just taken her daughter. They wanted something deeper. Jessica stumbled back, gasping, each breath wrapping her deeper into dread. The entity taunted her, whispering promises of a world where realities blurred away. "Seek what you have lost." Through the cracks of her shattered mind, a terrifying truth surfaced. This wasn't just about Emily. This was about her, too. As she stood alone, the shadows encroached, hungry and relentless. What had she awakened within herself? Was there still time to uncover the truth? Darkness awaited. Its insatiable hunger would have more than just her daughter. It desired her sanity. And with each minute that passed, it devoured her hope. Where would her path lead, and who would she become in the end? Jessica stumbled through the oppressive silence, her heart racing like a trapped animal. The laughter still echoed in her mind, a chorus of malicious mirth wrapping around her thoughts, tightening like a noose. The shadows, once menacing whispers, now swirled like a storm ready to unleash chaos. "Seek what you have lost." The words slithered through the air, a chilling mantra that clawed at her resolve. What had she truly lost? With a surge of defiance, Jessica fought against the darkness that threatened to pull her undoing. She needed answers, needed to find Emily, needed to pry her daughter from whatever had twisted her sweet voice into a mocking echo. Yet the room felt larger now, as if the very structure of her house was shifting. The walls bent and groaned under the weight of her fear. She strode towards the kitchen, the center of her home, a place once filled with warmth and laughter. Its aura now felt polluted, every surface covered in an oppressive gloom. The refrigerator hummed low, its light blinking like a dying star in the cosmic void. "Emily!" she cried out again, desperate, grasping at flickering hope. Each second felt like a lifetime, yet time here was fluid, slippery, like the shadows caressing her skin. Something glimmered in the corner of her eye. She turned, and her breath caught in her throat. On the kitchen table lay a small doll, familiar yet disturbingly disheveled. It was Emily's favorite, one Jessica had last seen tossed aside in the playroom. But this doll it stared back with soulless eyes, a smile stretching too wide, as if it held secrets of its OW, and as she approached, the laughter returned, swirling around her, taunting her thoughts. It seeped into the walls, flowed through the air she breathed. "Mommy, find me!" Panic surged through Jessica, palpable and suffocating. Reaching for the doll, her fingers grazed its plastic face, and an electric shock coursed through her. Twisting sensations flooded her mind, scenes flashing before her eyes. Emily playing in the yard, her laughter bright and innocent, suddenly torn away by a shadow looming in the distance. The laughter changed, pitch bending into something sinister. "No, let go," Jessica screamed, pulling her hand back, but the memories clung to her like a parasite. She staggered backward, collision course with the fridge. The shadows danced closer, grasping at her ankles, laughing with glee and that heartbeat. Jessica remembered the darkness wasn't just shadows outside her. The connection ran deep, intertwined with her own pain, regrets. "Mommy, where are you?" The voice wafted back, mocking and pleading all at once. "Emily!" she cried, a wild fury igniting within. Outside, she could hear the faint echoes of the world carrying on, sirens wailing in the distance, cars moving in flash. But each noise felt distant, an alien world she was being forcibly separated from. Throwing open the door to the attic, she climbed into the depths of her home, the place she had locked away. Fear licked at her heels as she passed stacks of forgotten boxes coated in dust. Memories crammed into each container were heavy with sorrow, shame stretching her heart as if it were an elastic band, ready to snap. Nothing whispered of safety here. Instead, it was redolent with dread. Should she summon whatever tangled horror had taken root in the corners of her mind? Jessica concentrated, rooting through her emotional clutter, each step unraveling secrets she had tried to bury. And then she found it. An old photo, crumpled and faded but still remarkably clear, the outline of Emily's old, laughing face, the innocence now swallowed by darkness. Underneath the photo lay a box, small, wooden, adorned with cracked paint that felt alive, almost breathing. As she reached for it, the shadows wavered, becoming frantic. Behind her, whispers crescendoed to feverish height. "Make it stop!" It was her own voice, strangled and desperate. Jessica hesitated, heart pounding a desperate rhythm. She didn't know what she would unleash. Fear intermingled with a heavy sense of dread. With trembling hands, she opened the box, and gasped. In that moment, she would either discover the truth or face the ultimate consequence of reckoning. A choice hung in the air, heavy and pressing, and the shadows seemed to pulse, their hunger undying. Would she dare let them consume her entire essence? Or would she emerge forged anew, battling for her daughter's very soul? "What waits inside?" The voices chorused, a challenge suspended in the air, growing ever more threatening. Jessica drew in a breath, sensing the impending storm surge within her. This was just the beginning, and she was not alone. The box creaked open, revealing its contents shrouded in faded velvet, as though it had been a grave holding onto secrets for far too long. A small object nestled within caught the dim light, glinting eerily, and Jessica's heart raced even faster. She bent closer, her breath caught in her throat, and lifted the delicate item from its resting place. It was a locket, tarnished silver etched with intricate designs that somehow felt familiar, a faint memory scraping the back of her mind. She opened it cautiously, the hinges creaking like the old bones of the house. Inside, two images glared back at her: Emily's radiant smile on one side, and, on the other, a shadowed figure. Its features were lost in darkness, but the shape felt wrong, twisted. "What is this?" she whispered, feeling the walls pressing in, the shadows growing more animated, more demanding. They writhed restlessly, beckoning her to recount the past she had long buried. "Mommy, let me go!" The voice crept into her ears, dripping with both longing and malice. Emily's laughter twisted into a snarl, sounding as if it was coming from every direction. Wrapping her in a suffocating embrace that sent ice through her veins, Jessica slammed the locket closed, her shaking hands unable to hold steady. She staggered back, breath hitching, panic knotting in her chest. The whispers morphed into manic laughter, each laugh echoing like the fiendish tease of ages-old tormentors. The attic felt alive, breathing around her, carving paths through her fog of uncertainty. "Find Emily," it taunted, the familiar warmth of her daughter's name now laced with dread. She had to gather her courage. Fighting through the haze of terror that enveloped her, she clutched the locket, feeling an urgency surge within her. She couldn't let the darkness consume Emily or herself, not now. Spurred by determination, she recalled fragments from her past, a moment when darkness had nearly stolen her child from her grasp. The night Emily disappeared from the playroom, giggles replaced with eerie silence, and Jessica's frantic search that seemed never-ending. Gathering years of regret, she whispered, "What do you want from me?" The shadows stirred violently in response. A window creaked open somewhere in the attic, letting in a gust of wind that sent dust swirling around her, embracing her in its deathly grasp. More intimately than ever, the laughter crescendoed, distorting into cries that echoed from within her own heart with renewed resolve. She darted toward the only window in the attic, driven by an instinct to escape the clutches of despair. She pushed it open, hoping for fresh air, for clarity, for anything that could cut through the darkness. But instead, she was met with a sight that froze the blood in her veins. Outside, a storm gathered, darker clouds swirling ominously, and embers of lightning flickered like angry eyes glaring back at her. Out there, she could almost see Emily lost in a tumultuous landscape of nightmares, just out of reach. "Mommy, help me!" Emily's voice rang out, so close yet tantalizingly far. A ruthless storm, both within and without, her two worlds colliding with terrifying force. Jessica pulled back, the vision tearing at her chest. She turned to the box, heart racing, realizing the answer might lie there. What had she hidden from herself? What unspeakable truth could possibly fracture the hold of darkness? With trembling hands, she dove back into the box, desperation guiding her fingers. There had to be something, a clue, a shred of hope that could illuminate the truth buried under layers of pain. And as she fumbled through its contents, the shadowed figure in the locket whispered a name, a malevolent promise in the seat of her soul. Jessica, her blood ran icy, her name a blade cutting through to the heart of her dread. What had she done? Did the darkness reflect back her own buried regrets, her past? Time slipped through her fingers, dark edges closing in as she fought against the thoughts spiraling into insanity. Just as she felt herself teetering on the brink, other memories scattered like ashes in the wind, facing her own demons she had long avoided. Find her, the whispers chanted, emboldened by her fear. Could she repair what she had lost? This was no longer just about Emily. This was about her. Jessica closed her eyes, choked with uncertainty, haunted by shadows that felt almost alive, and revealed what held the key. A truth that promised both salvation and destruction. And then, the attic door slammed shut, trapping her inside as the laughter returned louder, more sinister, echoing the choices that lay before her. Would she smash through the doors of her past, or remain lost with the secrets? And in the throes of that agonizing decision, the wind howled, rattling the windows, as the darkness called out once more. "Mommy, the storm is coming." The storm was indeed approaching, ready to ravage what little sanity remained. Would she face it or be consumed whole? The air thickened as if the very walls were leaning in to witness her unraveling. Jessica felt her pulse quicken, each beat a reminder that time was slipping, that Emily was still out there, somewhere in the chaos. How could she act when the voices of the dead echoed so fervently in her ears? A shadow flickered behind her, a slithering dark shape that wormed its way through her peripheral vision. She pivoted sharply, heart hammering. Nothing but a trick of her mind. Or was it? The attic seemed to pulse, breathing with her fears, and her fingers tightened around the locket. Find her, the whisper was more defined now, deep and chilling, a ghastly echo. She had to know more. But how? This locket, these shadows, they were part of a past she had desperately tried to cast aside. She forced herself back to the box. Each item she touched felt like a stellar piece of herself long forgotten. Old photographs, broken toys, fragments of lives intersecting with her daughter's laughter. They all screamed at her to remember, to confront. "Show me!" she shouted, her voice cracking in the stillness. The shadows thickened, swirling, raising the temperature around her. Suddenly, the air shifted, and a roar of wind screamed through the attic. Dust swirled violently, choking her senses as she staggered back, shielding her eyes. Then a spark ignited a bright light flashing from the locket. The images inside revealed a new world, a vibrant flash of warmth encased with shards of glass. "Mommy!" Emily's voice, clear and real this time, yanked Jessica from the dust cloud in her mind. It reverberated, breaking through the haze. Instinctively, she lunged back toward the locket, desperate to connect. "Where are you, Emily?" With frantic fingers, she pried the locket open again. And there was the shadowed figure no longer blurred but moving, its details sharpening. It was like watching a film unravel, scenes flashing past her eyes, a memory or a warning. She could almost hear her heartbeat echo in match with the pulse of the locket. "Help me know." The figure shifted, revealing something, a face twisted with unknown pain, yet hauntingly familiar. The likeness lurked just out of recognition, a materialization of dread, a version of herself she had never wanted to see. The reflections cascaded through the air, layering her guilt and anger together into a storm of palpable regret. "What did you do?" Jessica gasped, horrified. Revelation coursed through her veins. This was more than just Emily. It was her. The reflections of her choices, her failures, the weight of a mother's love twisted into something else entirely. "Mommy," the soft voice, now a heartbreaking chant, sawed through the tempest. The storm outside intensified, lashing rain against the window with ferocity. "Come to me." Jessica felt a raw urgency emerge, pushing through the dread that bound her. She could not remain here. The shadows threatened to engulf her, rekindling awful memories, chains binding her to the past. "Emily!" she screamed as she bolted for the door. It rattled, a barrier between her determination and the darkness threatening to swallow her whole. The whispers turned into screams, a cacophony of derision that clawed at her sanity. A flash of lightning illuminated the shadows, and for a heartbeat, she saw the door shift open with an unholy creak. It was an invitation, whether of salvation or demise. The darkness pooled around her, tempting, enticing. Would she push forward into the bluster, or turn and risk everything to save her daughter from a past she could not escape? With a surge of adrenaline, Jessica leaped forward. But just as she breached the doorway, the winds howled, and a thundering presence filled her mind. "Jessica, you shouldn't have opened it." In that moment of decision, she felt fingers icy and breathless grasping her wrist. What would she find waiting for her in the storm of truths? And more horrifying, what part of her would be left standing after standing against the tempest that called for her? The grip on Jessica's wrist tightened, an unyielding vice that pulled her back into the depths of the attic, swallowing the last fleeting ray of her resolve. Panic surged through her veins as she twisted and kicked, desperate for freedom. The shadows clawed at her like hungry beasts, urging her to surrender to their nightmares. "Let me go," she shouted, her voice cracking under the pressure of fear. The face of the figure before her sharpened, the pain etched into its features, striking a sickening chord. It was her, a distorted mirror of her own broken dreams. "Jessica," it was a sinister melody, dripping with regret. Memories flooded back, the birthday parties forgotten, the bedtime stories neglected, the moments when Emily had called out for her, only to find silence in response. "No, stop it," she screamed. "I don't want to see this." But the vision pressed on, relentless. The shadows twisted around her as if feeding on her anguish. The attic walls throbbed, vibrating with her guilt. She staggered backward, grappling for the locket that had tethered her to this chaos. The icy fingers loosened, and she stumbled free, breathing hard, her mind racing. With a partly defeated resolve, she swung the locket open once more. The light erupted again, illuminating the attic's corners with spectral clarity. "Emily?" Her voice wavered, rising from the depths of despair. I'm scared. Mommy, the echo rattled through her very core, binding her heart in a vice of terror and love. Was her daughter truly calling for help? The images in the locket shifted, morphing into a landscape riddled with shadows, dilapidated playgrounds drenched in darkness, swings creaking under the weight of memories long lost. Suddenly, the realization struck her with the force of a sledgehammer. The eerie atmosphere wasn't just a prison of her past. It was a barrier between her and Emily, the manipulation of all the horrors she had conjured. Could she shatter that barrier? Jessica's breath hitched as the shadow before her transformed, twisted, forming other figures, familiar yet grotesque. They were those she had wronged, past relationships marred by neglect and anger. Friends, family, their faces haunted her. You did this, they screamed in unison, voices rising into a symphony of judgment. The realization churned her gut. How had she let her own pain layer itself so thick around her heart, suffocating any semblance of maternal instinct? Stop, she shouted, her voice echoing against the cold wood. Emily is out there, and I will save her. With fierce desperation, she hurled the locket against the wall. It shattered with a deafening crack, sending shards scattering. The resulting silence felt like the calm before a storm. What remained was a ghostly glow, shimmering and beckoning. But as she stood there, the specters gathered around her, their faces merging to form a single visage, a sickly blend of love and accusation. They hissed words that seeped into her mind like poison. You can't escape your past, Jessica. You are the architect of your pain. No, she screamed, shaking her head violently. No more. Before her stood the door she had risked everything to breach, now glowing with an otherworldly light. Beneath the weight of the enchanted silence, Jessica took a step forward. The shadows flickered, and an unseen force pressed against her back. Urging her onward, she touched the doorknob, the chill ricocheting through her. With a swift turn, she flung open the door. And there, beneath the spiral of stormy skies, was a forest. But this wasn't ordinary. It was alive with unseen dangers, twisting dark trees whispering secrets of sorrow. Emily, she cried, her voice a mixture of desperation and hope. Would she find her daughter at the end of this shadow-laden path? But as she stepped across the threshold, the wind howled around her, carrying a sinister whisper. You might find things you never wanted to see. What awaited her beyond the door? And was Emily merely a victim of her choices? Or was she intertwined in something darker? Jessica plunged forward into the forest, the door slamming shut behind her with a finality that sent a shudder through her spine. Shadows flitted between the gnarled branches, and every creak of wood felt like a whisper of warning. The air was thick, stifling. Her breaths came in quick gasps, each one laced with dread. Emily, she called again, her voice cracking in the oppressive silence. The wind carried her words, but they faded quickly, swallowed by the trees. She pressed on, heart hammering in her chest, each step sounding like a drumbeat of impending doom. The trees loomed overhead, their twisted forms casting monstrous shapes against the dim light. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of voices lacing the air. You shouldn't be here, one voice murmured, chilling her to the bone, while another hissed, Go back. It's not safe. Jessica tightened her grip on the remnants of the locket, its sharp edges biting into her palm. Each time she felt its weight, it reignited her determination. She wasn't going to turn back. She needed to find Emily, needed to face whatever darkness awaited her. A sudden rustle in the underbrush snapped her attention. She froze, heart racing, feeling the forest holding its breath. Out from the shadows stepped a figure, small and fragile, with wide, fearful eyes. Mommy? The voice barely escaped the girl's lips, a breathless tremor of recognition that sent tears stinging Jessica's eyes. Emily! Jessica rushed forward, but the child stepped back, fear shining brighter than any recognition. No! Stay away! Emily! Please! Jessica pleaded, moving slowly, desperately. It's me. I'm here to save you. But the little girl shook her head, stepping further into the shrouded darkness. You shouldn't have come here, you'll never escape, she gasped, her voice swallowed by the encroaching shadows that thickened around them. Suddenly, the trees began to shift, their limbs stretching like claws trying to ensnare her. Jessica felt panic clawing at her throat. I'm not leaving without you, she shouted, but the forest seemed to shake with laughter, a sinister chorus echoing as branches creaked overhead. Mommy! Emily cried, her voice filled with anguish. Help! Before Jessica could take another step, the ground beneath her feet pulsed, a violent tremor shaking through the earth. The shadows thickened, swirling around her, whispering dark secrets, promising her things that tugged at every unresolved piece of her soul. Face what you fear, Jessica, they taunted. This is your doing. Summoning her courage, she tore her gaze from Emily to the shadowy ground, realizing that the swirling darkness was alive, forming remnants of her past failures. Images washed over her. Birthdays forgotten. The sound of laughter turned into screams, every missed moment materializing into horrifying specters. Stop, she called, sinking to her knees. I'll face my demons. I'll do anything. As she spoke, the shadows recoiled, flickering with uncertainty. But their eyes, a myriad of glistening emptiness, held her captive. What will you sacrifice to save her? They hissed, weaving through the branches like serpents. Jessica leaned forward, determination eclipsing her fear. I will give whatever it takes. Just tell me what I must do. The wind howled louder, and the shadows seemed to pulse with a life of their own. Your truth or your daughter, what will it be? A choice, a soul-wrenching ultimatum hung in the air, like a noose tightening around her. Jessica clenched her fists, heart racing wildly against the impending darkness. Would she unravel the truth that had haunted her? Or would she risk it all to save Emily? Cries echoed in the distance, calling her back to the shadows, pulling her deeper into the abyss. The burden of choice pressed heavily against her chest. What would she choose? The darkness loomed closer, waiting, and time was running out. Mommy! Help! The desperation sliced through Jessica as she clawed her way toward the memory of her daughter. The chill in the air took root in her bones, a cold dread that seeped into her thoughts. Just hold on, Emily! She screamed, trying to drown out the taunting whispers weaving through the trees. They hissed secrets that twisted her feelings and fed on her guilt. They knew everything. As Jessica stumbled forward, the ground surged beneath her, waves of darkness crashing against her feet. The stone-hard earth felt alive, pulsing and twining with her fears. She pressed on, urging herself to fight through the choking dread curling around her throat. Face what you fear, they cooed, mocking. Images flooded her mind, Emily smiling on her 5th birthday. That last school play Jessica dismissed, the day she walked away, and the bitterness that lingered. Shadows danced in her peripheral vision, mocking her memories with spectral grins. Give me Emily, she cried, searching the forest for the source of her daughter's voice. What do I need to sacrifice? But in response, the trees shifted ominously, leaning in towards her, their dark leaves rustling like dry bones, and then, the air thickened. It shrieked with the sound of rustling wings, something ancient flapping through the twilight. Jessica glanced up, squinting against the dense shadows. A dark figure soared through the branches. Not a bird, but something hunched and monstrous with glowing, sickly eyes that drank in her fear. The creature landed silently, its form melting from the darkness. It crawled toward her, hunched and skeletal, limbs extending at unnatural angles. A voice oozed from its twisted mouth. Choose wisely or lose everything. What do you mean? Jessica hissed, her pulse pounding as the creature loomed closer. Your truth is buried deep. Would you unravel it, or protect your precious lie? Fear burrowed deeper into her heart, biting at the edges of her sanity. What truth? The haunting memories of neglect, of choices made to numb her guilt? Could she really face it all? Let me see her, she screamed, desperation flooding her voice. Please, I'll do whatever it takes. Truth or sacrifice, it taunted, words slithering through the air. Time to unveil your past, and it will demand a price. Jessica trembled, her own words echoing back at her. A terrible realization clawing its way up. Could it really lead her to Emily? She fought against the mounting tide of shadows and horror trying to steal her breath. A cacophony of whispers pressing against her mind. What will you give? Emily's voice broke through again. Fragile like glass, Mommy. Please. And in that moment, a surge of anger tore through Jessica. No, she would not lose her daughter again. The shadows quaked, sensing her resolve. But doubt snaked through her thoughts, taunting her heart, stitching fear into her very being. Jessica's heart raced. She needed to make a choice. The twilight was alive with horror, each breath a gamble, each heartbeat a consequence. She felt it, the reality she had hidden from clawing to the surface. What truth would she reveal? What would the darkness demand? The shadows shrank back, anticipating her answer, waiting with bated breath. Speak, the creature hissed, eyes narrowing. What will you sacrifice for love? An icy chill sank into the pit of her stomach. Was she ready to confront the sinister truth buried in her soul? The darkness swelled, wrapping around her as she teetered on the edge, fear crystallizing. But what awaited her when she took that step? What would she lose in the end? Time hung heavy, and the forest watched, waiting for her answer. Jessica felt the weight of the world press down on her shoulders, shadows clawing at her sanity. Every heartbeat pounded like a war drum, urging her to act. Her mind raced, wrestling with what lay buried in her heart. What would she reveal? What could she sacrifice? Emily, she called again, desperation clawing at her throat. I'm here. I will find you. The shadows twisted, echoing her cries, swirling like a tempest of dread. The darkness stirred, the creature looming closer, its eyes glimmering with malevolence. Choose, it hissed, voice dripping with mockery. Your truth or your daughter. Time slowed. A vision of Emily's laughter flickered through her memories, a fleeting glimpse of sunshine amidst the storm. Those moments when she chose her work over her child, her fear over her love. Jessica's chest tightened. The regrets morphed into a noxious cloud, suffocating her resolve. Damn it, she yelled. I choose my truth. Each word echoed in the silence, a desperate declaration, and the forest shuddered, realizing her defiance. The creature recoiled, surprise flickering in its eyes, and the darkness peeled back like a heavy veil. Images overwhelmed her, the past vivid and raw. She relived every moment where she had turned away from Emily, where she had buried her feelings beneath layers of worry and regret. The cries of her daughter echoed through her consciousness, reminding her of all the times she had ignored her child in pursuit of something hollow. It all coalesced into a moment of realization. Her daughter was lost not just to the darkness but to her own neglect. I'm so sorry I failed you, Jessica whispered, tears coursing down her cheeks. I'd do anything to take it back. I was lost. Suddenly, the shadows writhed, shifting in an ugly fury. The anguished cries of her memories became deafening, circling around her, biting at her sanity. You think recognizing your failures will save her? You can't escape your choices. No, Jessica shouted, finding a spark of strength as she reached out to the darkness. But I can confront them. I can be better. As her words hung in the air, the shadows shivered and shrank back, recoiling from her newfound will. The forest shifted, the lines of the dark trees softening as if acknowledging her courage. Let her go, she demanded, voice steadying. I embrace my truth. Break this hold. A high-pitched screech erupted from the creature, the bizarre amalgamation of her pain. You think the truth sets you free? It barred her with a twisted grin. It comes with a price. I'm ready, Jessica hollered, defiant. My past may haunt me, but my love for Emily will shatter your darkness. I won't run from my mistakes or let fear grip me any longer. The wind howled as the shadows surged, raging against her declaration. Jessica clasped her heart, anchoring herself in the warmth of love and remorse. She pictured her daughter vivid and bright, the laughter that lit up her world. Emily, she screamed. I love you. I will find you. I promise. The creature lunged at her, claws outstretched. But Jessica didn't flinch. She rushed forward, forcing her realization into the chaotic air. I accept my past and fight for my future. I won let it take Emily. The darkness recoiled at her intensity, swirling and writhing. Light cascaded from her heart, illuminating the twisted forest and melting the shadowy limbs. Emily, she cried again, fueled by conviction. The ground trembled, splitting under the opposing forces of her love and the darkness. You have no hold on me. In that moment of truth, she lunged, feeling the warmth of Emily's presence pulling her forward. With a blinding flash, the shadows screamed, disintegrating around her like smoke in the wind. The darkness broke, collapsing beneath the weight of her acceptance. Jessica broke free into a vibrant light, warmth flooding her heart. The forest faded, dissolving like a nightmare at dawn as the brightness enveloped her. She found herself standing in a familiar place, the living room of her home. The air was rich with the scent of lavender and sunshine through the open window. Except, this time the light was palpable. "Mommy?" A small voice broke through the haze. Jessica turned, overwhelmed with relief. There, skipping into the room, was Emily, radiant and giggling, her eyes brimming with joy. "You found me." Embracing her daughter, Jessica felt the chains of fear fall away. She had endured the storm and triumphed. Where shadows had once loomed, warmth now flooded her spirit. "I'm so sorry, baby. I will always be here. No more shadows between us," Jessica promised, breathless. With each word spoken, the shadows of her past whispered in the distance, fading into the ether. Together, mother and daughter stepped outside, sunlight pouring down. A future limitless and bright before them, a testament that love could heal even the deepest wounds. As they wandered into the shimmering day, Jessica felt her heart swell. Together, they would weave new memories, leaving the darkness of the past behind. Their laughter rang out pure and unwavering, echoing into the bright horizon. Free at last, don't let it end here. You need to subscribe now to our channel, so you won't miss out on more thrilling stories like this. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Let us hear your reactions in the comments section. Flood it with your thoughts and theories about this conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see how this ends.